You're good to go.
All right. Good afternoon, Inman readers and Coast to Coasters. My name is Patrick Kearns. I'm a staff reporter here at Inman. Joining me this afternoon is Jeff Lobb, the CEO of real estate consulting and training company Spark Tank Media, and the esteemed author of Inman's Guide to Finding the Best Brokerage for You. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to join Inmanville.
All right, great. So why don't you introduce yourself to our readers and those that may not be familiar with you, and give a little bit of background about yourself and your career in the real estate industry.
Sure. Been licensed and in the real estate business since 1988. Sold a lot of real estate even before technology was born. And we evolved from running myself as a business, teams, brokerages, and ran some larger companies as the vice president of a large franchise brand with about 800 offices. I started Spark Tank Media about 5 years ago, wanting to help more real estate agents, mortgage and title industry, just help elevate their game. We do a lot of speaking at conferences. We train agents. We coach agents to productivity. And our job is to level up sales and systems. So we're thrilled to be doing this kind of stuff. And we felt that this brand product was kind of a need from what I've been hearing out on the street.
All right, great. So tell me a little bit about why you decided to create this brokerage guide. Take me behind the curtain a little bit, what you're thinking and kind of building this and putting this together. Sure.
Well, first things first, it was built as a guide. It wasn't a review platform. It was the need for this. I travel different parts of the country. I'm speaking at conferences, and I'll hear some people say to me, have you heard about this company or this brand? And I would say, yeah, I've heard about it. And then I said, what do you know about it? And they would tell me what they thought they knew. And realistically, it was so far off. It wasn't even remotely close. They would think, oh, it's a pyramid thing. It's a flat fee company. It's a discount company. And when I'd look at them and I'd ask the question, well, who told you that? Oh, well, my broker was telling us what that was about. And it was, or I heard it from my colleague, and they're not a serious business. And I would look at them and say, wow, that was really just bad information. And I thought there should at least be something fairly factual. While, we can make our own assessments in the field, there had to be at least some comparison, because not only brand to brand, but model to model, as the models are changing dramatically with the market shift as well. So I felt there was a need for at least some standardized place to go where you can at least have a snapshot view of who's doing what models are what, and where they might differentiate to see what might suit your needs. Mm-hmm. So that was the thought.
Yeah, and who is this for? Is it for the young broker? Is it for the career changer? Is it for them all? Who is this really aimed towards?
At first I thought it was going to be for, your newer agents that were trying to just figure out where they belong or a team. But then as I started diving into it and I started speaking to people and doing a little background on this, I even found that the C-level execs that we were talking to on some of this content, they were quite intrigued by it. They were concerned and questioning, hey, what's going to be said about others? And how is the comparison going to be? And it really wasn't a comparison. It was really just a guide. But everyone was concerned about what else is happening behind the other curtains. So ultimately, I think it turned out to be something for any agent, but at the same time, the brand themselves may be looking to leverage it as well for comparison and also to see where they stand in today's marketplace.
Mm-hmm. So take us behind the curtain a little bit. How did you get all this information? How did you put it together? Is it all publicly available? Did you talk to the companies? Take us behind the process a bit.
Yeah, well, look, we had to do a couple things. I fought a few things myself. First of all, in this type of guide, you can't be opinionated, because we can all have an opinion. It would be like a debate that never ends. And I think anyone could debate their own brand. So I had to look at two things. While I have to look at the corporate level as one level, meaning I sent a letter out, an email out to pretty much all the C-level execs saying, hey, we're putting together a guide to help just put all the brands together in 4 categories. And we identified the 4 categories as, what kind of model are you? What kind of tech and tools do you have? What's training and coaching look like for you? And what's your culture? They're just trying to pick 4 categories. And while we did that, some C-level execs were super excited about being able to get the message out. And I said to them, with all due respect, I said, listen, well, I could find the information online, and I also have a pretty good judge of the brand you are. I'd rather see if there was something you had that might not be out there, a message or maybe something you're in the works with, that I can use your words instead of the web. Now, the only reason I had to turn to the web is I had to use public information, because here's where I fought, Patrick, is I know that while we have a brand at a corporate level, brands and franchises or independents or what have you may operate completely different in some cases at the local level. Mm-hmm. And there is no way to put a guide together for every operational office, because they will vary. They will vary based on tools they use, some culture they've created. So the only way to make some assessment of a guide to put out, like a restaurant guide, if you will, is to get them all from whatever public information is available, scour it down, plus what words came from the actual corporations and their teams, and try and make the best assessment of it to put it together in some comparable format. So that's really where it came from. That was the only place I could find that was equally fair to represent at a corporate level, knowing that it may be totally different in some local markets or regions.
Great. And this guide is a bit of a living document. Is that correct? I mean,
yeah, totally.
We've got a certain number of brokerages, and a lot of them are the bigger brokerages. And, people want their brokerage featured or more information, but you are going to be adding to this. And it's kind of growing because the industry is so huge and there's so many companies out there. That's correct? Of
course. Yeah. I mean, and if people have questions, by the way, ask questions. We're here to answer some questions if you have any, from a chat standpoint. Of course, it's a living document. It wasn't meant to be like, this is the only stuff. It had to start somewhere. We had to pick a selection of some of the brands that were maybe most recognized, or ones that we just had to start with based on their model, because we wanted to do some different models. What I found is some of the feedback I've gotten is there were people who just didn't realize certain models were really what they are. They would just say something like, oh, well, we're just like a Redfin, or we're just like, and I would just simply say, no, you're not. You don't understand. Redfin's model is this. And, oh, I didn't know that. Well, the simple things, everyone doesn't know about everything. And I even said to some others that were pretty content in where you were, I said, listen, if you're happy in your brand, that's fantastic. Stay there for the next 30 years. However, use the guide to at least understand that a few of these companies may be entering into your marketplace to compete within your space. So you should at least know there's a train coming down the path. And, I wanted to make that clear that there's new, brands and startups happening all the time, some with a lot of money and some not so much, but they're making an impact in our marketplaces. So, that's really where it's a living document. We're going to continue to add more independents. We didn't even tap the independent market. We only just wanted to put a few to get started to show that there's a difference in independence culture-wise. So we will continue to add in all these categories, and it'll live. And if you have, I guess, if they wanted to share some information with you too, they should probably email you as well, Patrick.
Yeah. You can always reach out to me at patrick@inman.com, or, leave a comment on Coast to Coast. We're here and always open to taking suggestions and everything at Inman. And
sure.
Like Jeff said, we would love your questions. So if you have questions for Jeff about the guide, please leave them in the comments and we can certainly get to them. We've got plenty of time. But for now, I'll go back to you. What were some of the things that surprised you when you were doing this research that you didn't know about some of these bigger companies? What was something that kind of knocked you off your chair a little bit and you said, wow, I didn't know it about that company? Yeah, there were some details of specific companies, whether it came to, whether you're being a stockholder and you might have heard of certain things about getting shares of a company, but you didn't quite understand how it vested or how you really got them, or, how the leadership really was in some of the companies based on their levels. So I think some of it was how some of the newer companies are either offering out either residual or stock or profit sharing. I think those are the bigger confusing parts of some of the models, because you hear from different agents, one thing, and you don't know if that was just a disgruntled person unhappy or if that was really a fact. So, I think when it comes to trying to make an assessment of all this stuff, we have to ask ourselves, like, what are the 3 or 4 or 5 things I should be asking some of these brokerages at the local level? Because I think we sometimes hear what we want to hear and we don't understand those details. And there were some pretty eye-opening ones for me when it came to the different compensation models, where it was pretty eye-opening. Yeah, and I'd love to get into that. I mean, you've got such different compensation models. Some brokerages promise a 100% split. some brokerages treat their agents as employees. Can you kind of get into that and explain what some of these different models are and some of the models that these newer companies like Purple Bricks has out there? I know they're kind of a bit of a controversial company in some realtor circles. So kind of explain some of the different models that we've got out there now.
Yeah, I mean, Purple Bricks is entering. I know I'm on the East Coast a lot, East Coast most of the time. I live here, but it's they're entering here pretty strong. They're a flat fee based company. Some might compare it to other flat fee companies that have been here in the past. And most people will get into the debate, and that's why this didn't become a debate, because you can argue marketing versus dollars. But from a really smart level is, what am I getting? Who are they targeting? And let's face it, today, everyone's about the consumer. What does the consumer want? That's where Zillow focused. That's where some large brands focused, is what is best interest of the consumer. And Purple Bricks model is really geared with the consumer in mind. They want to make sure they're looking after the consumer from a savings, from a marketing standpoint, and obviously the value prop. So that was their approach. Obviously, like anything else, time will tell how they produce, how they generate agents. I do know one thing that was also one of those surprising things is their agents get exclusive territories, which is unique to the real estate industry. Almost nobody has unique or independent territories kind of blocked off for me to market and farm my area. So you've got some flat fee models coming in. You've got, the EXPs that are doing with stock. That was interesting how to understand their stock structure, how they're giving people a vested interest in it. You've got residual incomes with the exit realties that have been around for a while that are generating residual factors based on gross income off the top. So I think it gets confusing when it comes to those types of compensation. But at the same time, even if you dealt with the REMAX and the KWs, those numbers can get confusing too if you don't ask the right questions. Like, you really have to understand it's not just about split. And quite frankly, I don't think people move because of split. I don't think splits, most of the problem, 95% of the time, they move because they've either felt that leadership failed them, they didn't like the culture, they didn't feel they were being helped or supported, and all the other factors. And then sometimes split comes in after that. So I don't even think it's the numbers game, but I do think you need to understand the numbers, because that's what people sell on. They sell on numbers to get that hype around money and how much money I'm going to make. I have teams I coach that are on 50-50 splits that make $200,000-$300,000 a year, and they're not complaining. Like, it's not about that. It's all the stuff they get with that. So I think we get caught up in splits a lot. And most of the time, it's usually not the most important thing when it comes to a brand or where you work.
Great. And I'd remind all our viewers right now, we're taking your questions for Jeff. So if you've got anything, leave them in the comments and we can get into it. And, you said it's not about the commission and the splits always, and that's why you've got these 4 different categories on this guide.
Yeah.
One of the big categories, I think, and where there's a lot of differentiation, is in technology.
Yeah.
The biggest thing being a lot of these companies are building their technology in-house. A lot of them are going to outside vendors. What's the difference here? If you're a broker looking for the right fit, why should you care whether or not the technology is built in-house or whether or not it comes from an outside vendor?
Sure, that's a great question. And it's probably one of the top conversations. And I think there's 2 ways to look at this. And I like to get down to grassroots. The 30,000 foot stuff doesn't settle well with me. You have to look at, companies are building their tech because they want to own it. They want to own the data. It's a data fight. And I get it, because it also adds value to the company from a value standpoint, from a stock proposition, all that good stuff. It's, you own it, you control it. However, you have to be able to build it, support it, and continue it, where most companies can't. Some of the companies with bigger pockets can. Here's the question that always comes down to the local level, is you could build all this great stuff and it might work really well. But would I, as the agent in small town America or big city America, trust my data, trust my clients and all my stuff that I've built for years in a company-owned system? That's the big question. And I think that's where a lot of companies have failed, is getting that trust and adoption. And I know that you will never get the majority adoption anymore. It's just almost, everyone has their own vendors per se. You'll get a good chunk. The race and the goal is to get more adoption in-house. And the only way I see that happening, and I think a few that are building smartly right now are going to hit it and get this, is if I'm going to put my data, personal clients' information into a company-owned system, and I know I can export it and take it out and all that nonsense, that's great, but you still have it. I have to really get a big benefit from it. I need to be getting some kind of, artificial intelligence or predictive information or data that's at my fingertips that's going to make me money quickly that I really can't either afford, want to deal with, or get from an outside vendor that's too complicated. Mm-hmm. I need to make sure if I'm getting big value, I might put my stuff in. If I don't, I'm going to go find the outside vendor anyway. And you've just spent $10 million building stuff that most won't use. It's more of a sales pitch to the brand. Mm-hmm. So the goal is get the adoption.
Great. And what are, you've been in this industry a long time. What are some of the coolest, most impressive tech things that you came across while doing this research? Something that a brokerage is doing that you thought, wow, I never thought we'd be able to find a tech solution for that, or this could really be a game changer for this industry.
Sure. Well, I think the best tech right now that's being built in-house, I mean, there are also vendors that are doing it too really well, that's being put in-house is a clean, simple dashboard that's using predictive data and artificial intelligence that's simply telling me, based on real factual information, it's figuring out who should I really be talking to. I have a database of 5,000 people. Not only who should I be talking to, but why. Give me those 5 people, 8, 10 people where something is happening that I could spend my time calling 10 people instead of trying to call cold dozens and dozens and dozens. Give me the magic. Use that data to give me something that says, hey, you should call this person because they're in the home 7 years. They have over 80,000 in equity in their home right now. There's some life events that just took place. They just changed jobs. There might be worth a phone call to say, hey, what's up? Like, that's the kind of stuff that you proactively give to me would be a huge benefit. And those companies are building this kind of stuff where now I can see my time is more productive. You're making use out of my database. And I now have something to be more of a hotter, warm to hot lead versus trying to be cold and smile and dial kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. That's where the good stuff is coming. And the cleaner the dashboard and simpler it is to get that information and communicate the conversation, because it's also important next is if I have the conversation, I want the conversation to stay in one place. I don't want it in 5 other places with text and Facebook, and I want it in one place. So the people building that right now are onto some real good stuff.
Mm-hmm. And one of the aspects of this guide is coaching. So can you talk to me a little bit about some of the trends you've seen in coaching recently? And I guess, how do you decide what format is best for you, especially if you're a young broker and you haven't been in a big corporate structure, or you haven't been somewhere with a ton of coaching? How do you know what the right fit is?
I think you really need to look at the leadership that's in your office, hands-on. I mean, there might be some great corporate training, and that's fantastic. While you should always benefit if there is some corporate level training, but most of the time, the stuff that's should be most valuable to you is what's coming down to the local market you're in from your leadership, from your broker, your manager, or if there is an in-house coach. The typical challenge we face is a lot of the internal people might have great experience, but don't know how to coach agents up. They just don't have that skill set. They're good at producing, or they're good at maybe managing numbers in an office. There are people that can do it really well, but there's usually where the weakness lies. And if the corporation, the brand, can't get those people to be great coaches, agents seek outside worlds. I mean, let's face it. We've got to give credits to the couple of the big ones. Tom Ferry's just crushing it you got Buffini still doing his thing. Jared James. I mean, there's people out there, coaches that are making a big impact in this industry. I do coaching at different levels, and I coach brokerages and teams, but at the same time, we're doing things a little bit more strategically versus volume based. So everyone's got a different approach. But what I'm finding, here's exactly what we're finding. Most of the people that we're working with are lacking systems. They're lacking, what do I do now? How do I do it smarter? And they don't know about a lot of the other resources other than what's being offered in this little tiny box. And today's agent needs to know how they should be taking bets. Because let's face it, competition's heating up. So they need this outside world information that sometimes is not being offered at the local levels, which is why they're seeking outside help.
Great. And to kind of piggyback off of that, culture is another thing. You can read as much as you want about culture on a list or in a guide and see the kind of things these companies are doing, but you can't really know until you've experienced it yourself. So how can somebody use the guide, though, to give themselves a sense of the culture? Or is it really a feel thing? And then kind of go over some of these different company cultures, because you've got EXP, for example, which has this virtual cloud campus, which is so different than working for a franchisor or so different from working for an indie brokerage. So kind of, set that up a little bit and talk about some of those different cultures.
Sure. Reality-based is this. What you read and what you hear about is so different than actually feeling it and doing it. Me hearing about EXP's virtual world, cloud-based stuff sounded, at first, I'll tell you, when I first met Glenn years ago, it sounded like a little quirky. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of it's out there, man. But you know what? He's done a great job. He's built it up. He's built getting market share. He's built the platform out. And you see, you got some momentum. But then the reality is when you actually get into it, and I asked for a demo, hey, bring me into this world you look at it so much differently, like, holy cow, I can't believe this does this. So what you read as culture, really, culture is about feel. Culture is about feel. No words in a guide. It can only give you some guidance as to what it might be like that says, should I look into this further? Because what I say culture is here, you still have to understand there's culture in my local market. My local brand might be doing a terrible job of culture, doesn't participate in anything, doesn't do any of the events, it doesn't use any of the corporate technology given to them. They're same old. We're right 2 miles up the road. That same brand might be just crushing it, might be doing everything right, have the right culture, have the right events, have the right stuff with their agents. And that feel is so much different. You have to feel culture. So what you might read here is just some guidance on, hey, this is kind of what it's like. Here's what they're supposed to be like. You dive into your local markets and you make that decision yourself.
And what are some things somebody should be looking for if they go into a brokerage? How do you know from such a short visit what the culture is like? Are there some things that you've learned over the years that you know to look for, or some questions to ask?
Yeah, I mean, every time you walk in on any type of observation, or call it an interview, call it just checking out your competition, everyone's on their best behavior. There's no doubt. It's kind of like an interview. You go in, you try and show your best side. Best thing is talk to the agents, talk to some of the other agents, not necessarily right there. Then pop into one of their broker opens, pop into one of their open houses, talk to them, see what they like and don't like. Remember, there's no perfect world at any brand. It's not there. No perfect world. Ask them questions about it. Secondly, I would always ask more details about, I understand your model. I understand some of your splits. I saw some of the model. Now break this down for me. I want to understand, what other fees are we talking about? What other dollars are coming out of my paycheck? And I don't mind spending dollars, but I want to understand why, and does it make sense for me? Too many times models get too complicated. Agents get all frazzled, don't hear what they're saying. And then next thing you know, 6 months later, they're like, why is my paycheck? And then you're unhappy. So they're not asking the right questions up front. So I would definitely be asking other agents. I would definitely be asking about how money is really dispersed. I would be looking them up and see what they do on social. How are they looking on social? What's perception? What does Google look like when I Google them? And I would even Google some of their agents to see what some of their agents look like. What's their reputation look like? That'd be something important to me. And then to others, how's branding? Is my brand going to be consistent? The biggest thing we have in this industry that's never been likely is we call a franchise, but it's never been the true model of a real franchise. The McDonald's and the Burger Kings all are franchises, but they all look and act the same based on a model. But we might have a model and some should look the same, but many have too many variables and the brand gets a little changed in color, and people are marketing things differently and the words are different. And sometimes the colors are even wrong. So you want to see what's important to you. Is freedom, flexibility important to you? Is actually having a physical office important to you? How much support do I really need? And those are the types of things you're going to make your decision based on the brand you're going to choose, because some will let you just fly by. You're on your own. We'll pay you a lot more, but you're on your own. Others really want that support and want that handholding and want that, background of someone being in an office all the time still available. So these are things we have to look at as we make those decisions.
Great. And as you had mentioned, this is a living document. So had you an infinite amount of time, and as you kind of build this, what are some other things that you think you'd like to get into? What are some other areas that you think are important to consider that maybe aren't yet in this guide, but could be in future versions?
Well, I think we could do a lot more by breaking down more local level stuff. I think we could break down, things either by regional things or maybe companies that are simply solo, not just independent, but maybe, pockets of 16 offices and what they're doing special and unique in their markets. I think sometimes even when we come to an Inman and we attend to connect, we run into people that are doing things so uniquely in their worlds that you never even knew they existed. They were never on the map. And I think we can sometimes learn from not just the big brands, but I've worked with people that have 15, 20 offices in a state that are doing such an amazing job, but they're in this pocket you never heard of, or you never heard of them. And we could learn a lot based on either our models, our cultures, or maybe how they're doing things really right that we could incorporate into our own businesses. So if I had a guide and I saw some things that maybe were unique type of marketing platforms or unique things that are outside the box, those are things I want to know about. So we may be looking for just those things. What unique things are brands doing that are differentiating themselves?
Okay, great. And we just have a couple minutes left here. Is there anything else you think that Inman readers should know about the guide? Anything else you'd like to, let us in behind the curtain a little bit, or let us know about the guide, or anything we didn't cover today?
No, just take it for what it is. It's a guide. There's no way in this world we're going to be able to have a debate or review. And actually, you know what? If people wanted to actually have that debate, I see some hungry agents that want it. It might be good for an Inman stage. It might be a great thing to have a really good debate on my tech's better than your tech and all that good stuff. That's awesome. That's not what this is for. It was really just to help solve the one or two major questions about is what brands are doing, the different models that are existing. And I'll tell you, there are so many people that have emailed me and messaged me, even on Facebook, that said, I never even heard of this company. Where are they? I said, well, guess what? They're here and here, but they might be there real soon. Or this type of model might be coming up by another name is creating it. Because I know of about 5 different companies right now that are being created, not the big, Remax KW size, but they're creating their own little model that's planning to raise money and launch with kind of a hybrid of these models. The goal is just be knowledgeable about what's out there. If I'm competing in my marketplace and I'm with a great brand and I'm thrilled and happy here, I know one day, or maybe sooner than later, I'm competing with that brand. And if I'm competing with it and you want to win, you better know what they're up to, what they're doing. And even if you saw something in this guide that at least triggered saying, oh, that sounds interesting, then take it beyond the guide. It's only a guide. Take it beyond the guide. Do your own homework. Google them, dive into their website, ask questions, call their agents, do that stuff. If I'm competing, I want to know everything that's happening in my market. So I say this is just not a guide for, hey, I want to leave my brand. I might be happy with my brand, but understand that there's a new concept happening all the time. So that's what we need to be aware of. And I think we'll continue to see that as we elevate more and add more model brands to this living document. But I mean, there's 20, 30 others I could ramble off that should be on this already now.
Right.
But there's only so much time in the day. And we did this just as a start to see if it would get attention and traction. And I think there's a need for it. I think a lot of brands will leverage it.
All right, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My guest was Jeff Lobb, the CEO of Spark Tank Media. Patrick Kearns, a staff reporter here at Inman. Feel free to continue the conversation here in Coast to Coast and on the Great Brokerage Guide, and check it out at inman.com. Jeff, thank you so much.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Inman.